Hi everybody, this is Braxwolf. I'm going to post a World of Warships video, and I've done a couple of these in the past, but I got some feedback from some folks who watched them and said, I watched a few minutes of your video, but I really have no idea what's going on. And that's fair because I've played almost 13,000 matches and I still don't know what's going on sometimes. But what I thought I might do is actually narrate a couple of these and maybe help explain some of the stuff that's going on. First of all, this is the load screen that we're paused on here. I wanted to go through real quick what we're looking at as far as the map is concerned and what the wind conditions are for this game. As you can see, my team is down here. This is where we're spawning on the map. The enemy team is somewhere up here. We don't know yet because we don't know until we spot them what their position is. You can see that there are three kind of what I call capture points. I guess they're called capture points in the middle of this map, and the idea is for us to get our ships step on these capture points, each one of these, long enough to gain control of it. Now, if the enemy steps on it when we're in it, we stop capturing it, vice versa. The longer you hold it, the more points they generate. Once the enemy steps on it, if you own the cap and they step on it, you stop generating points. So the idea is to get to 1,000 points by either using these capture points to generate those or to sink enough enemy ships, because you get points for doing that as well. So let's go ahead and continue this thing. I am sailing the Ohio, which is a United States battleship. It's not a real battleship, but it was one they made up for the game. It has really, really good guns. It's really tanky, and it's got great secondaries. It's actually a very, very good battleship. Not that you would know by the way I play it. That's not fair. I do okay in this match. I don't do as well as I probably could have as a top tier battleship in this match, but I'll also go through why that is. I'll point out the moment where I make my fatal mistake. One of the things, because these battleships are big and slow, one of the most important things to do is to take good position at the beginning of the match. I'm going to try and be a little bit careful. You can see I'm only going half speed, so I'm not going to get too close in, because there could be a destroyer or a submarine in there with torpedoes, and they'll take down a battleship real fast, even one as tanky as the Ohio. So I want to make sure that I know who's in and around the cap before I get anywhere near it. I'm hoping that my aircraft carrier, who spawned on this flank with me, here, I'll go ahead and pause this one more time, because we're looking at the lineup over here. It looks like we have a submarine and a destroyer right here. The Benson, who's going to play heavy into this match towards the end. We've got me as the only battleship. We've got a Moskva, which is a radar cruiser. And we've got the aircraft carrier going to this cap here at sea. One thing about World of Warships is it's really important to keep your eye on the minimap as much as possible, as much as humanly possible. And part of my fatal mistake here in a few minutes is that I didn't pay quite enough attention to it. I did early on, but when I get into the thick of things, I didn't pay as much attention to it as I should have. And that happens often in the heat of battle. Okay, the aircraft carrier has spotted some folks, and one of the things I want to point out to you is once he spotted the enemy destroyer, this Kagero here, this is a very dangerous, very stealthy Japanese destroyer with very good torpedoes. He's pointed away. He's headed this direction. Our aircraft carrier has scared him off. He's going. I was kind of hoping he'd go towards B cap instead of R cap. As we'll see soon, he does eventually come back. But I know right now that torpedo threat is going the wrong way, so to be a threat to me. So I'm going to continue towards the cap. We're actually capturing C cap. The submarine must be on the surface. He's taking the cap. One thing you'll notice is if you watch enough of World of Warship videos is that the streamers and video content creators have to come up with a lot to say at the beginning of a match, because it takes so long for a match to start up. Everybody getting their vehicles into place here, their ships into place. I can see the enemy Wisconsin over there. I'm going to take a shot at him. So at this point, an enemy Otago also shows up. That's a Japanese cruiser, which is a good cruiser, but it's tier 8 and it's a cruiser, so it's really no match for my Ohio. So what I'm thinking here is I'm watching that cruiser because he is a big danger to my destroyer and my submarine. So if I want to make sure that if he gets anywhere near the cap, that I scare him off with my big AP shells. And sure enough, the Otago just continues in towards the cap. I'm trying to kind of scare him off so that he doesn't pose as much of a threat to my smaller ships. Unfortunately, dispersion does nothing for me and only do 1,500 damage with these big guns. But then the Otago turns in. I don't know if he's chasing the submarine or what he's doing. But that's when I decide to push in a little bit because I want to try and take advantage of the fact that he's actually getting closer to me. And now the submarine has gone underwater. You can tell because our cap is now being captured by the Otago and the enemy team. I went ahead and popped my spotter plane here to see if I could spot that Otago and maybe get some shots off. He knows where I'm at because his Wisconsin's spotting me. But I don't know where he's at. And now I see him. And this was a terrible shot. He was able to dodge all of those shells, but luckily the Ohio has very good secondaries, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, I'm going to pause again here because I want to show you something that as I was worried about the Otago and the Wisconsin, one thing I didn't notice was this up here. And this should have been something that I noticed on the mini map. This is 3 battleships right here, all in a row, coming right towards my cap. Now they're tier 8s. So they're not nearly as good of a ship as mine. But there's 3 of them, not to mention this tier 10 battleship over here. That means we are at a 4-to-1 battleship disadvantage this cap, and I did not realize it right now because I'm too busy trying to get this Otago out of the way for my destroyer and my submarine. So I'm doing my best to angle towards the Wisconsin and also get my guns on this Otago, and I do. I take care of the cruiser, which is good for my destroyer. So now I do notice the battleships over here, and I also have to turn in towards these torpedoes because I don't want to take more than one if I don't have to. Those are Japanese torpedoes from the Otago. And now something else interesting happens. The Kagero shows back up. And there he is, an enemy destroyer with really good torpedoes. So I take a nice chunk out of him there. And I want to make sure that I take care of him before he can do any damage to our submarine. And also, I just don't want him in the cap because he scares battleships away. He scares anybody away because his torpedoes are so good. Luckily, my secondaries do take care of him. And that's probably the last good thing I'm going to do in this battle. just a warning, because as you can see again, we have these guys here. And this is also where I make my fatal mistake of the match. We have these guys here. I know they're pushing around this way. So my decision here is to do this, which is wrong. I decide I'm going to turn around and try and angle these guys from the stern and also kite away and do some damage at the same time. What I was hoping was that the Wisconsin was still up here trying to snipe at me. What happened in reality was the Wisconsin made a good move and continued to push up this line. So when I make this turn, I might be angling these 3 battleships, but I'm completely broadside to the Wisconsin, which is a very bad place to be. And not only that, but I can't really continue to turn away because I'm headed towards this island right here. So this is my fatal flaw. I should have turned the other way. I should have turned this way. I think part of my decision process here was also that my guns were already pointed this direction. So if I turn this way, my guns are going to be facing these 3 battleships coming at me. If I turn this way, I got to wait for my turrets to turn all the way around. So that factored into the decision, but it still would have been the better move in hindsight, as we're going to see. The Yorktown tried to smoke me up a couple of different times. Like right there he did, but I instead of turning the way, like I said I should have, I turned this to the right flank. Now I do get a nice chunk of damage off of the Atlantico here. And quite honestly, I did a good deal of damage for being in such a bad position, and up to all of these battleships. And it's right about here that I realize I'm in huge trouble, because now I see where the Wisconsin is. And he's not where I wanted him to be. I thought for a minute about trying to angle him again, but then I remembered those 3 battleships. There's 3 of them. They're going to hurt like they do right there. I do manage to set a fire with my secondaries here, and also take a nice chunk out of the key, I believe, with my main battery, but I just don't have a good place to be. And even though the Yorktown tried to lay down a smoke screen for me again, I had just fired my main battery guns, which pretty much negated any stealth that I was going to have. But it didn't really matter at this point. I was already dead. And there ends my match. It wasn't awful. I took care of the ships I wanted to take care of. But I probably could have contributed a lot more if I would have realized earlier that I was going to be outnumbered so heavily on that cap as far as battleships go. So now, what kind of position is our team in? Well, for one thing, I should probably mention that this is a replay, and right now replays are bugged. So normally, this green score would be my team, but because of the replay bug, this is actually the enemy team score. They are at 466 and we are at 385. And that is because they are at a ship advantage. They have sunk 2 ships, or they have sunk 4 ships and we have only sunk 2. So they have more points than we do. They have 1 cap, we have 2. What's going through my mind is what's going to happen here. It looks like they have they still have 4 battleships here. Is that right? Yeah, the key dies soon, but they still have 4 battleships here that are going to push into this cap, and they're going to take C cap. They own B cap, and we have nobody in position to take it except for maybe the Cleveland. But I don't think he's going to be able to with these other 4 battleships pushing in. We do have A cap, but look at all these ships that they still have at A cap, and some of them are stealthy. Some of them are stealthy submarines. So game's kind of not looking great right now. You can see our Yorktown here. He's decided he's going to start to kite away because of the battleships. This is a good move. We've got our submarine here, which is going to, and our Benson here, which is going to try as much as they can. Yeah, there goes the Atlantico. That was the one. The Atlantico died first, not the key. They're going to try and keep these guys out of the cap as much as possible, but they only have so many torpedoes. So they're probably going to get pushed out of there. So we do even it up here. The Yorktown was able to take care of the destroyer that was camping in B cap, the enemy destroyer. But our Cleveland still decided not to go in because there is an enemy Thunderer bearing down on them. Thunderer is a big British battleship that sets a lot of fires and has very good high explosive shells. So right now they're going to probably take this cap. It looks not great over here either, to be honest. These guys are facing down a Thunder. There's probably a submarine around here still somewhere that they can't see. I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, I start manipulating the camera to see more of what's going on. Our submarine does hit the Wisconsin a few times with torpedoes, but it didn't do much damage, honestly, and it cost him his ship. So submarine is now gone, and I'm going to pause again because right here is where I started to watch what our Benson was doing, and he's right here. This is the destroyer that spawned on my cap. He's about the only one left over here. And if I was playing the Benson right now, I probably would have gone ahead and stepped on this cap, B cap, to start to stop the enemy from ticking up points and possibly even take the cap. You're not going to be able to come back, or there's nothing you can do against. If you come back this way, there's nothing you can do against these battleships. You might be able to sink one of them. There's no way you're going to sink three of them. So I started wondering, okay, Benson, when are you going to head into B-cap? But as you can see now, he's turning away on the minimap. He's turning away from B-cap. He's not going to go in and capture the point. And I even tell him in chat, cap B. One of the reasons I wanted to go over this was because of this Benson, because he is not playing a destroyer the way I would play it. In fact, the whole time, for the next probably 5 minutes, I actually watched this guy because I'm thinking to myself, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's off here on his own. Right now, he looks like he's sailing around the island. What is he doing this for? He's avoiding the caps. It doesn't make any sense. But as we will see towards the end of the match, the Benson actually makes a huge difference in this match, playing a destroyer a different way than I would have. And I think it's important to point that out sometimes, that there's not one perfect way to play a ship. People have different play styles, and sometimes they even make the wrong decision and it works out. I feel like he does make a wrong decision, not here necessarily, but I'll point out a little bit later when. Right here, he has a good line of sight to the key. He's spotting the key. The key can't see him. His torpedoes are loaded, but he chooses not to torpedo the key. I would have torpedoed at the key. The key is he's in a bad position. He's up against an island. He cannot move away. He cannot kite away from a set of torpedoes coming at him. Probably could have hit him with a few. But he chooses not to reveal his position. He's over here spotting the key for the rest of the team, which is not. Oh, the Turkish just took a big hit from the Amagi, and the Yorktown finishes him off with bombers. He chooses to spot the key, which is good. It's not a bad decision. We still have an Amagi back over here, a battleship with really, really good armor penetrating shells that could take a bunch off the key. But he has to be spotted to be shot at by those battleships that are further away. So yeah, right there he was shot at. So this is not a terrible decision by the Benson. Again, I would have torpedoed him when he was 7 kilometers away, but he did not. I also want to point out that I don't exactly know what these ships are doing right now. They are also not attempting to cap. Our Holland has taken care of one submarine already over at his cap. And he's kind of almost a non-factor right now. He's guarding this cap against the other submarine, but he's too far away to do anything else right now. Oh, and now he's on top of the other submarine, so he'll drop his depth charges right on top of him. But again, as far as map position goes, we're still not in great shape. We got these ships here that are not really making an effort to play either of these objectives. probably because their battleships are in a really good position right now. The Wisconsin right here and the Key right here are they've got the Amagi in a crossfire, which means no matter which way he angles, he's going to be broadside to somebody, kind of like I was. The Cleveland is in huge danger because either one of these guys could take him out in one salvo. So they're just in a bad spot. Our whole team kind of is in a bad position right now, except this Benson, who just kind of seems to be hanging around up here. So he kind of follows the Key. Yep, and there goes the Amagi and the Cleveland. So now we're even on ships again. The Holland did take care of the other submarine. So A cap is completely secure. There's nothing they can do except for if the aircraft carrier, the Parseval, decided to turn around and try and get in that cap, and he will not, because he knows there's a destroyer there. So right now, though, they're not in a great position either. Now the Benson shoots his torps off at the Key, and he decides to step on the cap, which was a good decision. But I want to point something out, because this is where the Wisconsin makes a mistake on the enemy team. Wisconsin, who was in a good position here, has now decided, because he caught sight of the Yorktown, the aircraft carrier, he's now decided to chase him. And he's paying no attention to the fact that this capture point is being stepped on by our destroyer. Now, I don't know if that's because he's so focused on the aircraft carrier, or if he just doesn't want to deal with pushing in towards a torpedo destroyer. But that's going to end up being a bad mistake for him. Enemy is still up 710 to 510, so they're up 200 points. Ships are even. We're about to have a cap advantage. The Benson is about ready to take C cap. And the Key did take a torpedo there. Might have taken two. And he has now decided to turn around, because he had to turn around due to the torpedoes being fired at him anyway, because he now knows where the DD is. Well, he should have, because the capture point was being taken. He's now decided that the only move he has to make, the enemy Key, is now to push back into this cap that was just taken, because this cap is there. So there's not really any danger, other than possibly the Holland decided to go in there, but he didn't. And the Holland actually, at this point, he also catches sight of the enemy aircraft carrier. And the Holland, if you don't know, is one of the best destroyers for fighting against aircraft. Their anti-aircraft defenses are the best of any destroyer in the game. So this Parseval, which is, I believe he's 2 tiers lower, is having a hard time doing anything to the Holland. All of his planes are getting shot down before they get there. And the Holland has decided, I'm going to go ahead and push this guy, because, and this ends up to be a really smart move on the Holland's point, because on the Holland's point, because what happens then, the aircraft carrier, the Parseval, pays no attention to what the Benson is doing. He could have spotted the Benson for the Key right now with his airplanes, and he's too busy fighting off the Holland. This is where the Benson makes a good move and a bad move. The good move is he sees the Key coming, and he decides he's going to torpedo into the path of where the Key is sailing. Right there is where he shoots his torps. This is where he makes what I think is a mistake. He decides to lay down a smoke screen. And I'll tell you why I think this is a bad idea. So for one thing, we know the Key is coming this way. He torpedoed right in that path. To me, there's no need to set a smoke screen here. All he needs to do is continue along his path and keep this island between himself and the Key, so that he is not spotted. And the Key would absolutely never know where he was. But once he smokes up, the key should know that the destroyer is right here and that this torpedo is coming this direction. What he should do at that point is probably turn in towards the smoke screen even before he sees the torpedoes. And that way he might only take one. He might dodge them all, or he might only take one or two. But what he does instead is he continues to sail in a straight line towards the cap, ignoring the fact that there's an obvious smoke screen right here with a destroyer inside of it. So that's the mistake that the key makes. But the mistake that the Benson makes right here as well is right here. He starts reversing to get out of his smoke to see if he can find where the key's at. And he's very, very lucky that as soon as he catches sight of the key right here, boom, the key takes 4 torpedoes and dies. So that was a great play by the Benson. It was a terrible play by the key. For one thing, he should have had HE loaded. He knows there's a destroyer over here. He should have had high explosive loaded, ready to shoot at a destroyer, bow in towards the smoke screen that had the obvious destroyer in it, where torpedoes would be coming from. He did none of those things as far as we can tell, and sailed in a straight line right into the wall of torpedoes. So now the Benson is free. Look at this. Look at the mini-map here. At this point, there's nobody that can stop him. This cap is ours forever. There's nobody in this cap. The only enemy here is the Wisconsin, who is still headed this way. He's too far from either one of these objectives to take it. The only objective he's anywhere near is B cap, which they already own. So he's committed now. He's committed to trying to take down the Yorktown, and he's not doing a very good job of it. He's having a really hard time doing any damage, but he's kind of stuck. The Parzival, as we said before, is so busy dealing with the Holland, he's just ignoring the Benson. At this point, the game is won for my team. There's nothing the enemy can do at this point. As soon as the key ran into those torpedoes, it was over. And so now it's all over except for the Benson to continue to pad his score by taking B cap that nobody can stop him. I mean, the CV could stop him. The aircraft carrier could send planes over his way, but he's too busy trying to survive against the Holland, which, again, he's doing a terrible job at. The Holland played a great game. He sank 2 submarines, and he's chasing down their aircraft carrier and keeping him busy so that he has no time to worry about anything else that's going on the map. And now the Holland has decided he's taken enough off of the aircraft carrier with torpedoes. He's just going to gun him down. You can kind of see the shells from behind the island, and there goes the Parzival. The only one left on the enemy team is the Wisconsin, who's too far away from any objective to do any damage at all.
Great job, shipmates.
And it's all over but the Gloatin'. Yeah, and that Wisconsin, who did such a good job getting on my flank early on, getting on my broadside, just made a bad decision to chase the aircraft carrier instead of playing the capture points. And he's not even doing that much damage to the Yorktown. And for some reason, the Benson's shooting at the Wisconsin, even though he has no hope of getting his shells that far. And we're going to hit 1,000 points before the Wisconsin goes down, or the Yorktown. Yeah, sank 2 ships, 80,000 damage. I tanked 2 million. Not terrible. Still ended up 5th on the team in the Ohio. Considering I died pretty early in the match, that's not a bad score. I'll be okay with that. Again, I could have probably had more of an impact on the game if I would have read the mini-map better earlier. These top 3, though, that survived, played fantastic. Holland, Yorktown, Benson, good job, guys. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you again soon.